Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you, and welcome back to Join the Mahdi. As always, I'm your host, Ardijan and Mahdi.
And I'm Alexandra Mahdi.
And today we will be discussing actually a matter that really hits home, especially those who see themselves as lovers of Jesus Christ, or Jesus the Messiah, or as many Muslims would call Jesus or Isa ibn Maryam, Jesus the son of Mary. Jesus the son of Mary is a central character in Christianity. He's a central character even in Islam, where they believe that in both cases, Jesus is the Messiah. Jesus has a sort of second coming or return in the end times, and heralds in or supports this paving the way of the kingdom of heaven. And it's an important topic because, most people in the world believe in Jesus. More than 50% of the world believe in Jesus, whether they believe him to be a prophet or God, or the Son of God, or a messenger, or a word of God. There is this extreme love and admiration for Jesus Christ.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in the Western world, in Western countries where people are predominantly Christian, the people who are, born into those countries, the majority of those people, they follow this doctrine in Christianity that, all we need to do is accept Jesus and we will be saved, and they believe that Jesus is going to return in the end times. He's going to return in order to usher in the kingdom of heaven on earth. This is a belief that so many people around the world have. And it's really interesting actually, because in one of the recent episodes on the Mahdi has appeared, Abu al-Sadiq from his piece, he's talking about this clip basically, which one of the brothers found online, where they're asking people in America, and America is one of those, very predominantly Christian countries, it's a major Christian country, where the majority of the people there, they do claim to believe in Jesus. But they're also, in this clip, basically, they're discussing, the immigration policy in America, and, how that would play out if Jesus was to return, in this time. So let's go to the clip, I think.
Jesus was here right now. Would you let him in?
As long as he went through the proper, as long as
he came here legally. As long as Jesus Christ came to this country legally, we would let him in.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Interesting clip, basically. This guy on TikTok, he's going around asking these people, how they would feel. Earlier on in the clip, he's actually asking people, do the immigration policies in America, do they work with, what the Bible is telling us, or what the Abrahamic, the history of the Abrahamic religions is telling us. So he's asking people, what would happen if Jesus came here, basically? Would he be welcome to come to America? And this woman is saying, if he came here legally, then he would, which is, it opens up this whole other discussion, right? Because, to actually get to America as an immigrant is something that's extremely difficult to do. And, if Jesus, he was able to get into America legally, he wouldn't be able to run for office. He wouldn't be able to run, for being the president, which shows that this whole system is kind of blocking him off, so this whole country basically, which is claiming to be waiting for the return of Jesus, claiming that is their whole belief basically, in this one man, yet the return basically that they're waiting for would be blocked off by the systems in America.
Yeah, so why is this all important? Well, it's important because, look, we have to bear in mind something, right? Is first and foremost, we have that Jesus Christ, many of the people believe in his return, especially people of the West, as you were saying, like America, as we had seen in the clip. In America, Jesus Christ is believed to be the Son of God. He is for the people God. He is for the people someone who is deserving of worship. He is the one who, without him, there would be no atonement for sin, because they believe what they believe, that Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior, and that he had died upon the cross. And we have actually a verse from the Bible over here where it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. So the Christians, they believe that Jesus Christ is the literal begotten Son of God, that God has a physical son, and that this physical son, he offered it as a sacrifice for humanity in order that the people may have everlasting life, that basically this original sin may be removed from them.
Yeah.
So this is a belief in Christianity. However, what's the problem here? The problem is that Jesus Christ, who the people believe that he ascended in body and in spirit, they believe, Muslims and Christians, that he will descend again in body and in spirit. Why is this important? Well, it's important because, Alex, where was Jesus Christ born in?
Yeah, I mean, he was born in Israel, right?
He was born in what people would call present-day Israel. Okay, but present-day Israel, does that mean that if he were to return, would he be an Israeli citizen?
Well, I mean, what would he be basically? Would he be accepted by the country that is Israel today? Would he be accepted and welcomed there? It's hard to say really what would actually happen.
I mean, I think what would happen is, if the Jews at the time of Jesus saw him as a false Messiah and they wanted to crucify him, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that the Jewish people, if they were to see the return of Jesus, I don't think that they would accept him. I think, and I would assume, that they would deem him as a evil man. They would probably perceive him as the Antichrist who came out from hell and back into the world as a sort of Antichrist figure for them. So, I mean, where does that leave Jesus now? Would he be able to stay in Israel?
Yeah. And, would he be able to leave Israel and go somewhere else? Because what's happening to the refugees right now who are coming out of Israel, especially, the Palestinian refugees are being rejected by most of the Muslim countries, and, in this whole area, they're being given no safe haven to go, in reality. And, it's extremely hard for those people to enter Western countries at the moment, where they're treated like a hindrance and they're treated like a problem, basically, and scapegoated, by the authorities in those countries. So, what would really happen, if Jesus did return today and he came and he said to the world, look, I'm Jesus, I've returned, in order to be your king, which is, what the majority of the people are expecting who believe in Christianity to happen. And, we can really see that the systems in the world are completely set up to oppress actually Jesus and to not allow him to be king, and to he'd probably end up locked up in a deportation center somewhere, which is where so many people are. Right now there's 45 million people who are refugees, and many of them are actually imprisoned, even though they haven't even committed any crime, just because their country of origin became unsafe for them, which is likely what would happen if Jesus did return to Israel. It's likely that he would be unsafe there, as he was initially in his other incarnation. So for sure, the system is set up to oppress people. It's certainly not a system which is set up in order to make Jesus Christ the king, especially not in these Christian countries.
Yeah, and especially in these Christian countries, unfortunately, where they say that Jesus Christ is their Lord and their Savior. I mean, we just saw that clip in which there is a woman who is an American who's wearing the Donald Trump hat, the MAGA hat, which is basically Make America Great Again. And, America is supposed to be a country founded on Christian ideals and Christian, morals and manners, basically.
Christian values, basically.
Yeah, Christian values. But we see that according to this woman, Jesus Christ, their own Lord and Savior, they would not allow him to be in the country if so happens Jesus came by illegal means, or if Jesus Christ did not come in the legal routes as everyone else. So that basically means, imagine that, right? That basically means for that woman, and if it's that woman, I don't think it's just her. I think that there's a lot of people who probably have this kind of sentiment too.
Yeah, because Trump, he has this extremely anti-refugee sentiment, right? So the majority of the people in the country, they voted for him, right? So they must have they must agree with him, right?
Yeah, for sure. And if they agree with him, then that means that, well, if Jesus Christ were to, like Abu Saik said in one of his episodes, he said, well, if Jesus Christ then came down on the clouds, well, then they still wouldn't really accept him then.
Yeah.
And then that also means, sorry for cutting you off.
No.
It also means then that if Jesus Christ came down from the clouds into mainland America, they would probably deport him. But deport him where? Back into heaven? It's like, where are they going to deport him if he descends from heaven?
Yeah.
Where is he supposed to go now?
Yeah.
If he landed in America and they see him as an illegal immigrant, what are they supposed to do with him? If they're saying that if we'll accept him only if he comes by the legal means.
Yeah. No, honestly, like it's such an important contradiction, you know, that anyone who is believing in Christianity really needs to ask themselves, you know, about the world that we're living in today, because it's really set up, you know, to be the like absolute antithesis of Christianity, like the complete opposite, basically. And, you know, in the episode on the Mahdi as a Peer channel where Abba al-Sadiq from Human Species is actually presenting a solution to the refugee crisis, you know, he's explaining that, you know, the believers throughout history, they were always refugees. You know, they were always people who were, they were displaced, basically. They were strangers. They were traveling. And, you know, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family, he actually describes the believers and the companions of the Mahdi as strangers. You know, he uses this particular word because this is what the believers always are. And it's like, if people really look into their books, into their like scriptures, then they can see the evidence for this, right? So the world is really, it's set up to treat, you know, the true believers in the prophets and messengers as people who are like a hindrance, you know, as people who are like scapegoated for the world's problems, you know, as people who they're refusing to help, basically. And this is going really against what the Bible tells us to do.
Yeah, the Bible actually tells the people that, you know, don't, you know, basically, I'm just paraphrasing here, but don't forget about the refugees, or, you know, when strangers come into your land, treat them well, because you yourselves were strangers when you guys were in Egypt. You know, you guys didn't like that you were enslaved. You didn't like that you were treated differently. And actually we have the quote on the screen. And it says in Leviticus, this is now in the Bible, this is in the first 5 books, Leviticus, where it says, when a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat him. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you are foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So, I mean, we see that if people want to hold Christian values, if they want to say that they want to make America like a religious country, because that's what Trump is saying now, actually. Trump has been saying in the news ever since he became president that he wants to bring back Christian values. Well, one of the Christian values is you have to treat the strangers good. You have to treat the outsiders, the foreigners, good.
Yeah, exactly. We have to, if we want to follow Christian values, we have to follow them. We can't pick and choose, you know, which ones we would like to follow and which ones we would not like to. And this is a huge one, you know, looking after the poor, looking after the refugees and caring for these people is actually an obligation, you know, for following Christianity. And, you know, in the US, you know, the like Trump is basically, he's talking about sending people to El Salvador, basically, sending them back, or even sending them to Guantanamo Bay. And it's the same in the UK, basically. They have this plan in the UK to send refugees to Rwanda, or, you know, even keep them basically locked up in these like prison boats, which is what they were doing for a time. And it's like these extremely like inhumane and disturbing solutions, basically, which are like such human rights violations. You know, these people, you know, the majority of the people who are refugees, they haven't actually like committed a crime, and that's the reason they had to leave their home country. It's because, you know, something happened that caused them to be unsafe in that country. Maybe there was like a conflict, or maybe there was like a religious issue, or something happened basically which meant their lives would be in danger, so they had to leave. You know, no one wants to be like a displaced person with no home. No one really sets out to do that for sort of selfish reasons, or, you know, from trying to take things from other people. So this reaction to them is like extremely inhumane. And it's very disturbing, you know, because we have to ask ourselves, you know, as people in the West, you know, what would we do if there was like some huge natural disaster in the countries that we were living in, which we like view as so safe, you know? You know, what would happen if we like ended up with no safe home to live in? You know, how would we like to be treated by people? And it seems, you know, that the leaders in the world today, you know, especially in the richer countries, they kind of view like the refugees and asylum seekers as scapegoats. You know, they blame the you know, the lack of the lack of like equality basically in wealth on these people. They say, you know, these people are coming to like take your wealth and take your homes and all of these things, but they're actually going against the message, you know, what the Bible and the Quran tells us, that, you know, God has provided enough sustenance in the world for everyone to have what they need. So, you know, if that's true, then, you know, refugees can't be coming to steal people's sustenance. They can't be coming to take your share, you know, if they only want their share. So it's like these kind of ideas, they've been propagated by the people who are really taking your share, you know, the people who are, you know, the extremely rich and wealthy people, and it's very convenient for them, you know, to scapegoat these refugees. So, you know, the solution that Abu Sadiq, from him his peace, has provided, you know, on the Mahdi has appeared channel, is a perfect solution, right? It's a perfect solution for everyone, okay? Because it's a solution for the refugees, who wouldn't have to be dealt with in such a like horrifically inhumane way anymore. You know, they would have somewhere that would be safe for them to go, and it's a solution for the people who are running the countries. It's a solution for the people who are already living in the countries, who say, you know, that they don't want refugees in their countries. You know, they are a hindrance to them. So this is a solution which, it's, you know, the reality of it should make everyone happy. It's a perfect solution, and that is to establish a country for refugees worldwide. So anyone who is a refugee, you know, they, as soon as they leave their country, as soon as they become unsafe and have to leave the country that they're in, they would have a place to go to, right? They would have a specific country which is set up for people who are refugees, for people who are asylum seekers, for people who are unsafe in the country where they come from. And, you know, this is the divine just state, basically. This is, you know, the whole point, basically, to give these people what they need, these people who have been left without a home, left without enough sustenance, to give them what they need, basically.
And what do people need? I mean, people basically need a land, they need a home, they need shelter, and they need safety. And that's why people become refugees in the first place. Nobody wants to leave the land that they call home. I mean, a land that you call home is basically where your memories are, your childhood was. It's a place that you probably had, you know, your first child. It's a land in which you got married. It is a land that you had your first friendship and neighbors, and nobody wants to leave that behind.
Yeah.
But most people do, because they don't really have a choice. And you know, one thing that I like what you said, and it kind of like rung a bell in my ear, I mean, in my head, which was this idea of the cost of following Jesus, right? What was one of the costs of following Jesus that is kind of related to, you know, what it is that a Christian value has to be?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure which one you're referring to.
I'm referring to that basically Jesus is, I'm just paraphrasing here, but from the three things that he said, right? One was that a person shouldn't really say goodbye to their family. They have to go ahead, right, and do the works of God. You know, those people. And then you also have those people who Jesus said to, you know, when they said, "Hey, I'm just going to go bury my dead father first," he said, "Let the dead bury the dead." Yeah. And the third thing was pretty much that, look, if you're going to follow me, know that I don't have a home. Yeah. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, exactly.
So if Jesus doesn't have a home, well, then where is he going? Where does he stay in? Yeah. And the one place that we know for a fact is that the places that he stays in is the entire world, really, because the sunnah, or the tradition of Jesus, and not just Jesus, actually all of the disciples, was tourism.
Exactly, to travel and spread the word of God, basically, to spread the message of the truth to as many people as possible. And, you know, this is because, you know, and it has always been the fact, basically, that the believers, they're traveling, okay? They're people who carry their homes on their backs. And the companions of the Qaim are like described as the same, right? They're people who carry their homes on their backs.
Basically refugees.
Exactly, yeah, basically. And this is because, you know, the system that we've been living in up until now, it is the system of Iblis. It's not the system of Adam. So the believers are the ones who are estranged. You know, they are people who become displaced. They are people who are oppressed in the state of Iblis. So yeah, this is why it's so important that we have this solution now.
And the solution now, you know, because now that we think about it, it's what the people, obviously, they don't want Jesus. I mean, that they made it very clear in that video clip that we played. And Western ideals or Christian values are no longer really Christian values anymore. It's just made up values that people have in their heads as to the idea of what Christ is like, when in actuality Christ himself was a refugee. He and imagine that, Alex, is that Jesus in his infancy years became a refugee. He was in Israel, born in Israel, but because of King Herod, who wanted to basically destroy and kill and assassinate baby Jesus, what did his parents do? Well, Joseph and Mary, they had to leave to Egypt.
Yeah,
because they had to leave to the west.
Yeah. He was unsafe, because of a tyrant, basically, King Herod, who had made it unsafe for him, who was persecuting, the babies, basically. He was like wanting to kill all of the babies, something which was like been repeated so many times throughout history, because, these tyrants heard a prophecy about a savior who was going to come, about one of the prophets and messengers who was going to come, who would be, an enemy to them. So they did this, and, this caused, Joseph and Mary to have to leave, basically, in order to have Jesus, in order for him to survive. And this is something which has been, happening over and over again throughout history, because, we are living in this system of Iblis. We are living in this very satanic, organized world, basically. And I think, anyone who is a believer in Jesus or a believer in any of the prophets and messengers, you really have to ask yourself, does this world that we're living in reflect the teachings of the prophets and messengers? Does it reflect, what Jesus was really saying? Because this is another thing, the countries that we're living in, it's not only the treatment of refugees, it's like the treatment of poor people, the treatment of people who are oppressed, because, Jesus, he always came to look after the poor and look after the oppressed. And he said, sell all your possessions and give your money to the poor, when he was asked, how someone could become one of his companions. And for sure, the countries that we're living in, they don't reflect these words of Jesus. So if we want to be like a true follower, we have to follow the man who is the Jesus of the time, the man who actually comes with the same message, the man who is saying, like Jesus, like Muhammad and all of the prophets and messengers, that we have to look after our fellow human being, and, we have to look after the stranger. And, Abu Sadiq, from him his peace, is the only person in the world who's saying anything like this. And he's the only person who has an actually feasible solution, right? That if all these countries who do not wish to help with refugees, they do not want the refugees in their country, if they just give like a bit of land. And he even said, if people don't want to do that, they can give Antarctica, because God would be with Abu Sadiq, he would be with him in that nation that he's creating. So, it would become a country which is uninhabitable due to its weather conditions, to something which is, very good conditions, God would make it good. So this is something that is it's the only realistic solution that's ever been presented for this problem. And it's a problem which is just escalating over time. It's called a refugee crisis. And, like I said, there's 45 million refugees worldwide right now. And it's something which is only getting worse, because we're having all of these situations, in Palestine and around the world, where people are getting displaced more and more, So, yeah, it's extremely important that we find a solution for this problem.
And we pretty much have a solution for the problem. Abu Sadiq, from him his peace, had spoken about a place that he wants, which is a place right now is being called Refugee Land. And hopefully, if we could pull up the QR code on the screen for the petition on change.org, anybody who is interested in helping refugees around the world and basically putting a name out there for not just for this dawah, but for humanity first, scan the QR code on the screen, go to change.org and sign this petition for refugee land, establishing a country for refugees worldwide. And it's such an amazing concept. It is such an amazing thing that we're trying to accomplish here. Why? Because these 45 million people, most people don't want them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be classified as refugees anymore.
Yeah.
They would actually be recognized as citizens of a country, or residents of a country. But no, they're still labeled as refugees. So all of these, because of the refugee crisis, especially since it happened, I think it was 2011. Or 2014, when the refugee crisis really skyrocketed really badly. Most of the people don't want them in their countries. They thought to themselves, whoa, this is way more than what we can handle, because of what happened in Iraq and in Syria and in Palestine and many other places around the world, not just the Middle East. We're more than happy to actually just take these people and put them in a land that they can make their own.
Yeah.
And they can be broken up into different religious sections, because, you know, that's what a lot of people want. They want a communion with one another of the same faith and of the same beliefs and values. So one district could be a Christian district, broken up into other districts. Like maybe one district could be for the Catholics, another one could be for the Protestants and Methodists, you know, the different Protestant denominations.
And this would resolve, you know, any potential issues, you know, with people not wanting to live under the same laws. You know, if they have religious differences, this is like a potential issue that like could occur if like many people from all of these different locations and different cultures were living together. But Abu Sadiq has the solution basically that they can just live like within their own district, basically, so they can be governed within their own laws, you know, live by the rules of their own books, which is, you know, what would happen in the divine just state. You know, if people want to follow Christianity, they can follow the laws of Christianity. If people want to follow Judaism, they can follow the laws of Judaism. And the same with Islam, you know, or whatever sect within those religions they want to follow, like they are perfectly able to do that. But it's just the idea, you know, that they would have a place where they could go and do that.
No, they would have a place where they can go and do that. And not only that, they would be able to do that, and they would be able to do that without being harassed. They would be able to do that without being persecuted. And, you know, that, I mean, that's a beautiful place. You know, it would be a place for the very first time where religious discrimination and intolerance will no longer be tolerated. It would be a place where everybody is mixed, and a place where everybody's culture and religion and their laws are respected. Not like the other nations that for some reason, you know, they'll judge a Jew according to the laws of Islam or the laws of Jesus. You know, they don't find that fair. I mean, how are you allowing that? Same thing with the Christians, same thing with the Muslims, and same thing with the other religions around the world that the people adhere to, whether it's Buddhism, Hinduism, Baha'ism, Sikhism, or any of these other faiths that the people hold on to. We are a people that want the best for humanity and want what we would want for ourselves. We want a land. We want to be ruled by our own laws. And if we want that, well, you know, God is the kind of God, we believe God is the kind of God that you have to want for others what you want for yourself. That is the golden rule. Want for others what you want for yourself, and do to others what you would want done to yourself.
Exactly.
I would not, I mean, we are not a people that would want to oppress anybody because of religious differences. Therefore, you know, if we are feeling that way, we don't want to do that for other people. If we feel that, hey, we want to be judged according to the laws that we believe God had sent down, well, for the other people, if they don't believe in our laws, well, at least they can practice and believe in the laws that God had sent down for them if they believe that it's applicable for them.
So, exactly.
I mean, this
it's
is
just justice.
It is justice. It's justice because what is justice? I mean, Abu Sadiq said very clearly, justice is putting things in their right place. If you are a person insistent upon your faith, and you're insistent that justice is that you go along with your laws that you have in your books, no problem. Then these laws will be applied for you, because that is justice, and it would be injustice on our part to pass down a law that you don't believe in.
Exactly. And if anyone, you know, is listening and they would like to call in, if they think, you know, there is a different solution for the refugee crisis, or, you know, they would just have any questions or any comments about what we're talking about, please feel free to do so.
Actually, I would actually love to see if anybody could even challenge that kind of solution. I mean, isn't
I'd like
it incredible?
to hear it,
I think it's so incredible that, you know, Abu Sadiq tried figuring out the refugee crisis even for the Palestinians when he talked about the whole Israeli-Palestinian solution.
And this is another problem which, like, no one has ever been able to provide a solution for.
In both cases.
In
both cases.
Exactly.
When it came to that case, he said, guys, look, sacrifice you know, bring forward your sacrifices. You know, sacrifice them. See if God accepts them. If God doesn't accept either of them, well, then you guys have to just get along. And now we're kind of saying the same. Like, Abu Sadiq is somebody, from him his peace, is somebody who has a solution, and nobody up until now has been able to challenge his solutions. I mean, that I think is a proof by itself that he's the Mahdi. Why? Because it says the Mahdi comes and he brings justice and equity into the world. I mean, can anybody come up with a better justice or better equity than what he's bringing into the table right now for these different problems in society?
Yeah, for sure, no. And another point I'd like to make about this, like another point I'd like to make about this basically is, you know, the people who are living in these countries, you know, who like, they really like don't want refugees to come into their countries, you know, they're really against refugees. You know, Abba Sadiq from Him is Peace, he said in one of the other recent episodes, you know, about the oath of allegiance, the Pledge of Allegiance, you know, that we are giving our allegiance to these people, these rulers over these countries, basically. You know, especially in America, you know, people are pledging allegiance to the system of America, you know, every day. And, you know, the reality is that when we pledge allegiance, or when we follow, when we uphold, when we vote for or support, you know, a ruler who is not appointed by God, or, you know, some, you know, any kind of authority who is not appointed by God, you know, the sins of those people, they actually fall onto us. So if we think about it, you know, if we're upholding or voting for a government which is causing this like level of oppression towards refugees, like they're locking them up in prisons basically and keeping them in like horrific conditions, and really, you know, a lot of them in places like a concentration camp basically, you know, if we think that, you know, we're basically supporting a government to do this, then you know, we have to accept that this is something which is wrong. And, you know, these crimes that the people are committing, these sins basically that they're committing, they're going to fall onto the people, you know, they're going to fall onto the people who are supporting those governments. So, you know, if you're voting for someone who is like in favor of oppressing refugees, who is like in favor of locking them up and like taking away their human rights, then unfortunately, you know, you're going to be one of the people who is guilty of those sins. You know, you can't like claim innocence just because you didn't directly do it. So this is why, you know, this solution is perfect, you know, for anyone who wants to just like wash their hands of this situation, basically. You know,
you actually reminded me of something very scary that Abu Sadiq has been talking about, especially when he had gone over in his latest episodes concerning the super soul and the rights of others. You know, there is a biblical passage regarding God's judgment upon the people, where, you know, he goes to two groups of people. One group of people who are believers or people who succeeded, and another group of people who were considered disbelievers or people who pretty much failed. He goes to one group and he says, you know, good on you. You know, you fed me when I needed food. You sheltered me when I needed shelter. And you gave me drink when I needed something to drink. And you dressed me when I was nude. So then the people, they asked, Lord, you know, where were you that, you know, you're saying all these things that we did for you. We never did it for you. I mean, how is this possible? Then he said, well, whatever you did for others, whatever you did for the least of my servants, you did for me. Then he turns to those who failed at that. And he said, you know, woe to you, you know, for you did not clothe me when I needed clothing, did not shelter me when I needed sheltering, and you did not do any of this stuff when I needed any of this stuff. And the people, they say, Lord, you know, where were you that, you know, you needed all this, that you needed to be fed and clothed and taken care of and all these things? Where were you that, you know, that you ever came to us asking for this and we deprived you of it? And he said, whatever you have not done for the least of my servants, you didn't do for me. So anybody who likes to scream and say that America is built on Christian values, or that the Western Christian nations are based on Christian values, then I think they need to examine themselves and see, well, you acting as a stone in the way for people to come into your land, to take shelter and to have food and to have water and to have clothing, then know for a fact anybody that you deprive, God on that day of judgment for you is going to ask you those same questions. Why didn't you feed me when I came to you? Why didn't you clothe me when I came to you? Why didn't you give me anything to drink when I came for you? And then you will say the same thing. God, where were you? We didn't see that you came to us asking for us. I mean, we would have done it, but where were you? And then he would say, well, you saw all these refugees that you kicked out of your lands and allowed them to like die in their homelands, or like die in the refugee camps, or like get drowned in the waters. Well, whatever you did for them, it's as if you did it for me. Thank you very much.
Wow. I mean, that's incredibly scary, and it just shows, you know, how far removed we are from the true message, you know, of Jesus and from all of the prophets and messengers, that we're living life in a way like this. Like, we're so determined in order to like, fight for our own share, that we're just like, ready to just like let everyone else die and just like fight for people to have nothing. And, actually like campaign for it and, like fight for it basically, when it's this situation which is so against, what all of the prophets and messengers told us to do. And it just shows, how much the world is so dark right now and how, really it is full of like complete injustice, and we're just used to it, you know. And the people, they're just kept into this like survival mode, you know, where, like I was saying before, you know, they're like told by the politicians and by these wealthy people that the reason, you know, that they're struggling to get by is because we have people like refugees who are coming in and like they're stealing their share, when the reality is like the share has been stolen, you know, by these people who've taken so much more than their share. You know, Abu Sadiq, he said like 95% of the wealth is owned by 1% of the people. So those are the people who've taken everyone's share, you know, and left all the poorest people to fight over what's left, and blame each other.
I'm sorry to say, but like, who gave them the right to say that they took our share? I mean, what are they talking about? Are they talking about all those shares of food that they have that instead of purchasing it, they allow it to rot or nearly go expire or not even expire at all?
Exactly.
But because it's not sold in the supermarket, they throw it in the trash, right? Edible food that is still not even expired. And instead of giving it to the poor, they allow that it all get destroyed and dumped, not because that is the right thing to do, but it's just because that's the way that they could save on taxes.
Exactly. And
then you tell me what is actually stealing people's food.
Yeah, basically depriving people of food in order so they can get money. And, you know, people who have like these huge mansions and second and third homes are telling people that, you know, immigrants and refugees are coming to steal your homes and steal your jobs and all of this stuff, which is what the people are told. And the reality is like the homes have been already stolen by these people. It's like this huge,
Remember one of those things that I was like mentioned about the Bible and regarding food? Do you? He said something along the lines of that there's a law actually in the Old Testament about those who harvest crops.
Yeah.
That once you harvest crops, you could take what you can take from it, right? Because you're the one who worked for it. But then there's a section that you have to leave.
Yeah.
For who?
Yeah, for people to just come in and pick up what they need. Yeah.
Are the Christians of the West practicing that today, or are they taking everything and throwing out anything that is extra?
Yeah, that's so interesting what you said, because it's like it's so like as far away as it possibly can be, like from that what we're supposed to be doing. So like if we plant food, if we can't plant crops, so we have to leave a share for anyone to just come in and pick up what they need.
I mean,
actually,
look at that. I mean, my God, thank you for you guys for pulling up this chart, because look at how insane that is. Global food waste. Approximately 1.3 billion tons of food is lost or wasted every year. This is about 1/3 of all the food produced for human consumption in the world. My God, look at that. 45% fruit and vegetables. I mean, then when it comes to meat, it's 20% of meat and 35% of fish. I mean, we're talking about animals that are being slaughtered for no reason, vegetables being plucked out the ground that people are saying, hey, you're stealing our share. It's like, no, your share is going to the trash.
Yeah, literally.
What are you talking about?
Like, so it's like this food, which is like perfectly good, basically, is being thrown away. And, you know, when I was younger, I knew people who would go to like dustbins, basically, and get like all of the food that had been thrown away from supermarkets. And that they were actually treated like criminals for doing that. Like, they weren't allowed to do it. Like, it was actually like a criminal act to go and take food from a dustbin, basically, which has been thrown up by a supermarket, and which is perfectly fine to eat. So, you know, when we have this, like, these two different ideas, basically what we're supposed to do is leave food for other people, and what we're actually doing is preventing people from having perfectly good food, which no one is going to eat anyway. So we're supposed to take out a share from our own food and give it to others, you know, if we're creating food. But, you know, the complete opposite is being done, and it's something, you know, that's you know, it's so evil, basically.
It is evil. You know, if these people are so greedy, and imagine that, you know, I think the people don't understand these numbers. 1.3 billion tons, not even kilos. Kilos is nothing compared to tons. 1.3 billion tons of food is being wasted. All that food could have gone to what statistics are saying, and what Abu Saik has said, even in the Go of the Wise in his videos. 25,000 people every day are dying from starvation and related causes. I mean, all of that food, you know, that people are complaining about. I mean, these supermarkets could be heroes instead of being viewed as like greedy, like
soulless,
insensitive,
like corporate giants.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of being seen as that, these guys can be seen as superheroes who they make and produce all of this food. And then they say at the end of the day, look, we're not able to sell this. This is going to go to trash. So instead of throwing it in the trash, how about we just give all this food out for free for the orphans, for the poor, for the refugees? How about we take all this food to the refugee camps where these people are just sad and like they just lost their homes and family members and they came from war-torn countries? How about we just like blow them up with all these gifts of delicious food, so this way they can feel some comfort? Yeah. Why don't they do that? Wouldn't that be a Christian value where Jesus himself, although he had, anybody who's afraid that they're going to be losing wealth because they're giving, well, what did Jesus do? Jesus had just a couple of fishes and a couple of pieces of bread. And he had 500 people not even 500, 5,000 people to feed. Yeah. And because he was so generous and so loving, he kept on splitting the bread and the fish. And what happened? God multiplied it. And instead of there being waste, actually there was way more food than the people could ever imagine and can ever really eat. Yeah. He was just giving them out and people were being sustained. Yeah. If people have Christian values, why don't they act like Jesus then? Why don't they just do what Jesus did?
Exactly. It's this anxiety about our sustenance, like all of the religions are telling us there's enough sustenance for everyone, basically. The Quran tells us this. But the culture that we have today is so driven by people like making money and hoarding money and keeping money and like keeping their like wealth and resources for themselves. It's like it's gone completely in the opposite direction, whereas like you said, we're supposed to live in a state where we're just trusting God. We're able to just take our sustenance from the world, from the crops which have been planted and just take it there and then and eat it. This is the way that we're supposed to be living. And Abbas Sadiq from Him Species saying, we're the only species that works like a 9-to-5 job, like in order to sustain ourselves, basically. But if you look at it, the majority of the jobs people are doing, they're actually like pointless jobs, which aren't really like directly helping them. They're just basically making profits for other people. So it's like the super wealthy have got us like, they've tricked us basically, into working for them, in order to sustain them, in order to give them more than they need, so we can work like really hard and work really long hours, so we can't even afford what we actually need, and they've told us basically to scapegoat these innocent people and blame them for the situation that we're in. And the reality is it's a very small minority of people who are actually doing this to us, and this is so far away from the way that God wants us to live. It's so far away from the message that Jesus and all of the prophets and messengers had for us. And the reality is that we don't have to live like this. It's like a huge con. We don't need to accept it anymore. There is a solution to all of these problems, okay? And it is to follow the man who's appointed by God, to follow the man who has the same message that Jesus had, the same message that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family, and the same as all of the prophets and messengers, that we can't be rich. It's haram to be rich. It's wrong to be rich, and oppress other people. That we have to help the strangers. We have to help the people who are suffering in the world, and this way we can all have what we deserve, okay? Because there is enough sustenance for everyone to have what they need. There is enough for space and homes in the world for everyone to have like a safe place to live. There is enough in the world, so we need to stop basically buying this lie basically that there's not enough. We have to fight against each other in order to keep our share. We have to hoard things. We have to hold on to things and oppress other people, in order to keep our sort of place of relative safety like that we've acquired. This is just a lie. And as soon as we stop buying into this, and as soon as we accept that we can follow this man who is appointed by God, we can pledge allegiance to him, and he can be the ruler. We don't have to accept these other people anymore. Then we will be in paradise. We will be in the Garden of Eden. We will be in a place, where we are sustained, basically. The world is sustaining us. We don't have to struggle and slave away in the way that we are doing right now.
Very well said, Alex. And unfortunately, we have pretty much run out of time, but it was a really good run today, and I really look forward to our next topics. And next up, guys, we're going to be having a new Islam. The show is called A New Islam with our brother Hussam and Hussaman. Inshallah, stay tuned for that in about 15 minutes. But anyway, I suppose that's a wrap. And guys, look, if you guys come from Western countries, if you are Christian, please look at these corporations, and if they claim to be Christians, well, have them have Christian values. You know, we have the Qa'im of the family Muhammad here, who is not even a Christian. He is not somebody who's even saying that Jesus is a son of God, or that he is God. But he's saying that, well, look at how Jesus is, and now look at how it is that you guys are running your nations.
Exactly.
So please bear these in mind, and let's together as one, as one species, as humanity. Stop bickering with one another, stop being so greedy, and stop causing corruption in the land, and let's fix this.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We'll see you in the next episode.